Regrettably, I'm about to cause trouble. Written and narrated by Amie McNee. Chapter 12. I got my bleed again. That meant I had been there from one full moon to the next. I had sent another 2 letters to Sherburne. Still no reply. There was a war within me, causing erratic and strange behaviour. Most of the time, I refused to help anyone. I would not witch. I said the phrase repeatedly, whenever I was asked to do anything remotely related to their craft. Yet I spent my days sat on the floor behind the counter, in my court, reading my witchly texts, ordering the poor fairy to fetch me warm drinks and bread and butter and honey. He even bought me flowers to decorate my floor court. I had fashioned my throne out of a blanket and my reading desk out of a small stool. I would whisper the text out loud, as though I was reading to the ladies of court, if the ladies of court were witches who chanted spells, of course. The first book was a handbook of charms and magic remedies. I was reading a spell to soothe monthly cramps. To help the cramp, take a piece of parchment as much as will go about your leg in the gaitering place. Write thereon these following words, gut and eagle and get all, and wear it next to your bare leg. It will help. I would need to try out this charm in private. I wonder if my mark would stop the spell from entering me. "Have you read anything that would help us with this ghost?" Rufus asked from above. We were to leave for the haunted house later that day. I bit my lip. I had seen a page that had looked potentially useful, but it had scared me so much that I had skipped it, reading a cure for toothache instead. He looked down at me in my court. I smoothed down my skirt. Whilst it was nice to move so freely without layers and layers of material, my mark was just that tiny bit closer to the world. "No," I decided upon. He frowned. "Makes me fucking nervous," he said, the profanity surprising me. "Me too," I confessed. Reluctantly, I thumbed through the pages until I found what I was looking for. To speak with spirits. Call their names, Orimoth, Belmoth, Limoc, and say thus: I conjure you by the names of the angels, and Sator, and Azamor, that ye intend to me in this Aeor, and send unto me a spirit that does fulfill my commanding and desire, and that can also understand my words for 1 or 2 years, or as long as I will. Who, in God's name, wanted to have contact with a spirit for 1 or 2 years? No. I shut the manuscript. This was devil work. It was like I could feel the presence of the fallen angel around me. This was not the work of God. I snatched at my lavender bundle within my skirt pocket and lit it on fire, letting the soft fumes cleanse my tiny court. Why was I being tempted like this? What kind of test was this? Or was it not a test at all, but a calling? Was my mark drawing me to these texts, to this life, because it was the only life I could lead? I threw the manuscript under the counter. I stood up. I crossed myself. I decided to write yet another letter, this time directly to my mother. I splattered it with exaggerations and some downright lies. It was mere hours before we were to leave for a house occupied by a ghostly spirit. I needed rescuing. Mother, regrettably, I'm about to cause trouble. I am going to publicly declare myself a witch, seeing as you have left it as my only option. I will let everyone know that I am yours, and will carry our family name and put it out the front of my witch's practice. It would be wise if you would send word to me before I lie with demons, and the whole of England believes that your daughter is magic. I am still of the opinion that I am not. Is there any news of my annulment? Any news at all would be appreciated. How are my brothers? How are Thomas's lessons coming along? Maude. P.S. I am currently sleeping in the same room as a very large moor that came off the streets. Of course, Rufus was the most gentle roommate and hardly even snored, but I didn't need to add that detail. Are you ready, Maude? Zita had come down the stairs carrying a trunk. I shook my head. We aren't to go for hours. I stared up at the witches. Hildy had several sacks of Lord knew what slung over her shoulder, and both were dressed in their travelling cloaks, with lavender bundles sticking out of their pockets. Rain is coming. We should leave now. I shook my head. I have a letter to send. You will have to send it upon our return. I won't come. I don't want to be a part of your demon work. Then don't come, and pack your things and leave our home, Zita commanded. What's upsetting you, Maude? Hildy signed. I have bad cramps, I said stupidly. You're bleeding? Zita asked. I checked to see if Rufus was in earshot, but I think he was in our room. I? You bleed on the full moon. Zita sounded impressed. You must come with us. A woman's bleed makes her potent and powerful. Nay, it makes us weak. We bleed and we have not even been wounded. I had heard a brother say that before. And yet we never die, Hildy said matter-of-factly. I frowned. You can stay back if you want. Will you be well here all alone? Rufus is coming with us then. Would you like him to come? Hildy replied, with an annoyingly sly smile creeping up one side of her mouth. Having a spirit when we are facing a spirit might be a good idea, I said defensively, my voice shrill. He's coming, don't worry. On cue, Rufus appeared down the stairs with a small sack of his belongings. Gather your things, we are leaving. Zita spoke with a tone of finality. My tummy flipped. We stood outside the locked-up shop. Hildy was writing a curse to leave upon the store door to scare away thieves and wrongdoers. I had a cape over my head, and my curls were out in force. No one would recognize me as Lady Maude. The coat I was wearing was lent to me by Hildy, and it had a large internal pocket where I had put Jimmy. I had been waiting for the scratches and chaos, but he was placated enough. I enjoyed the feeling of his purrs vibrating against my chest. Rufus, I whispered across at him. I felt we all needed to be quiet when out in public. We were not meant to be seen, witches and fairies. He looked over at me, and I flashed him a look at my hidden cat. He cracked a big smile at the sight of Jimmy's ears poking out past the fabric. Jimmy, he whispered back, pleased. Jimmy, I confirmed. I smiled at him. I bent my head to kiss my cat's little black muzzle. As I did so, I heard my husband's voice in my mind. He suckles at your teat. What if Jimmy started trying to feed from me? He was sitting at my breast. A cold sweat broke out over my skin. Finished, Hildy said, pocketing her chalk. Those that enter the witch's store, whilst we are out on witchly business, will be cursed with onion-eyed sores, and they will develop only upon the sinner's bottom, never to be cured. That cannot be a real curse, I said, looking at her. My eyes squinted in suspicion. You look so wild with your curls all loose, she said evasively, touching my hair. Beneath her curse were several words in a language and letter I did not know. What does that part mean? I asked, not wanting to know the answer. Hildy shrugged. It's Welsh. I think that part means dog, and the second part means cat. Is that part of the curse? No, but the language looks ominous, no? You're just as bad as Reggie, I exclaimed, signing as best as I could. There was no sign for the flat-mouthed Reggie, so I just pulled a stupid face and said his name loudly. She didn't have time to retaliate. A small brown carriage rounded the corner, Zita at its helm, a small, mutty-looking dog sitting upon her lap, entangled in the reins. All aboard the ghost train, she said loudly, in a surprisingly good mood. Rufus, you sit with me. Nay, I won't, he said firmly. Why, Sprite? Zita's thin eyebrows were raised. I don't like dogs. Oh, of course you don't, said Zita, as if he had told her before, and only now she remembered. Hildy will take the bitch in the carriage. She passed Hildy the placid animal. I felt Jimmy stir. Rufus gave Hildy a wide berth and stepped up next to Zita. Why the dog? I asked Hildy, loading the luggage under the seat. Bitch, she corrected. A spade bitch. Very well. Why the spade bitch? I asked, sitting down opposite her. She's our ghost hunter. She placed the dog on her lap. The sound of the mutt's panting faded under the rumbling of wheels over cobbles. As you can see by Rufus's reaction, spirits are warded off by her. She has a lot of powers in her tiny little paws. She touched the soft padded feet. What's her name? She belongs to one of our kin. She puts her out on loan, for spiritual situations. She had not understood me. I didn't understand your question, she guessed. Never mind, it's fine, I assured her. I noticed my voice shake a little, and I was glad she couldn't hear me. I was nervous. Don't worry, Maude, you'll be safe with me, she said softly. I stared out the window, longing to be in the gentle bustle of Watlington town, and not in a carriage destined for demons. I wanted to be amongst the clusters of people in the emporiums and stalls, invisible, lost in the songs of the fruit girls and the harsh barks of the traders, my steps hidden under the steady sound of horses' hooves clipping the cobbles. I would rather have my slippers in the filth that lined the stones than be going where I was going. We left town. The air cleared, quietened. The fire smoke had left the air, and so had the sound, but it did not soothe me. I got out my needlework and pretended I was on my way to court. Hampton Court, Henry's newest residence. I had heard it was something to behold. I brushed down my skirts and pushed my hair behind my ears. I should have bought a ribbon to tie it back. Why had I let it free? I was patching together a chemise for Rufus. He had come to us with only the clothes on his back. My hands shook as I tried to maneuver the tricky seam under the arm. A drop of sweat ran down my side. My mark squished uncomfortably against my other thigh. I felt Hildy's eyes on me. "You're as pale as the ghost we're about to meet." "This is always my colour," I retorted defensively. "Stick your head out the window and let the Oxfordshire air invigorate you. The smell of manure soothes the soul." Skeptically, I did as she said. Clutching my cat to my chest, I leant my head out into the open air. The wind whipped my hood down, and my hair flew backwards. It felt good. My temperature dropped. I looked out over the bronzing forests and harvested crops. I blinked away tears. I wasn't sure if they were tears from the wind, from sadness, or from fear, but I blinked them away, watering Oxfordshire's fields. I took several deep breaths. I was just beginning to feel better when I saw the Sotheby house about a mile away, its stone dark against the soft landscape.